Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Fronteras, a Changing America. I'm your host, Anthony Moreno. This week on the program, our guest is Fred Nathan, founder and executive director of Think New Mexico, a nonpartisan, solutions-focused think tank in our state, focusing on improving lives of New Mexico. Mr. Nathan joins us to discuss this year's legislative session and issues his organization is working on. Fred, thank you so much for joining us.
Anthony, thank you for having me.
There may be some viewers in our area who may not be familiar with your organization. Can you give us an update on the mission of your organization?
Well, Think New Mexico is a results-oriented think tank serving New Mexicans. We're a little bit different than those think tanks that your viewers may be aware of that are either way over on the left or way over on the right. We just believe in a state like New Mexico that's 49th or 50th in too many of these rankings, that the focus ought to be on solutions rather than political ideology. And consistent with that, we have a board of directors made up of Republicans, Democrats, and independents from all over the state. So for example, we have a former Republican governor from Las Cruces, Gary Carruthers, and we have a former Democratic Attorney General, Paul Bardicki, and the chair of our board is Roberta Cooper Ramo, the first woman president of the American Bar Association. So it's a group of statesmen and stateswomen, and we look for issues that can improve the lives of New Mexicans.
Okay, I want to start off, let's talk about the legislative session. A 60-day legislative session this year obviously is a very different legislation due to the pandemic and also security concerns due to the insurrection in Washington, D.C. in early January. Your thoughts on this legislative session? There was some complaints about people not being able to access their state lawmakers, but then there was also supporters of the push to make more committee hearings online, saying that more New Mexicans had a chance to weigh their concerns and speak their voices on issues facing our state during these committee hearings. Your thoughts on the transparency on how all of this was carried out?
Well, it was a difficult session, obviously, and I agree with both of those points of view. I do think there are parts of this that should be replicated to make it easier for people, especially from rural New Mexico, to be able to participate in the process. And for many of them, it's easier to do it electronically than in person. But I think something was lost by, in effect, locking out the public from this session. And, it always tends to work to benefit the lobbyists who could still get access to these legislators when the public can't. And that part of it, I think, was unfortunate.
Okay, I want to start off with some issues your organization has been working on. Let's talk about understanding the need for fair lending in New Mexico. This is an issue your group has been working on for a while, and in this legislative session, I believe it was Senate Bill 66. Now, this bill aimed to reduce the state's maximum interest rate on small loans from 175% to 36%. This stalled in, I believe it was the Senate. Can you kind of share us your thoughts on this bill and why it was needed?
Yeah, well, in the midst of this pandemic, well, let me go back. Many people may not realize what an enormous part of our economy the small loan industry is. Last year, over $660 million of loans were made $10,000 and less, and usually at a very high rate of interest. 175, which is what our state allows, is, depending on how you measure it, either the first or the third highest rate in the country. And during the pandemic, people are even more desperate for these loans. So we thought it was particularly urgent to try to address this issue and bring the rate down. Some of your viewers may know that at the federal level, the Congress has passed the Military Fair Lending act to bring the rate down to 36% for military service people and their immediate families. After that happened, many states moved their rates down to 36%. And we just thought it was important to try to get that done this year. Actually, Anthony, I just want to correct one thing. The Senate did pass our bill 25-14. It got bogged down in the House Judiciary Committee and then on the House side, and we weren't able to resurrect it and get it. They changed it and made it.
There was
95%.
an amendment. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
So,
thanks for that correction on that. There was an amendment to, I guess, increase the interest rate. Is that correct in the House side?
yes, and I also wanted to say, the best thing about working on this bill was Senator Bill Soules from Las Cruces, who was our prime sponsor and who was really a dedicated public servant. And he did everything he could to try to fix the bill. The bill actually went to a conference committee, and he was chairing the Senate side of that. The House members refused to meet in the conference committee, and we were hoping that we could work out some sort of compromise. And the Senate was just faced with a 99% rate, take it or leave it, which too many senators just found unconscionable for a small loan to low-income New Mexicans. And so the bill died, but I'm optimistic that we can get this done next year. The governor supports the bill, and we expect that it will be on the agenda in next year's 30-day session, and that we'll pass it.
Now, this so-called payday loan industry, they have a pretty strong lobby here in our state. Do you think that really played a role in this not being able to be passed this year?
Absolutely, Anthony. I've been doing this kind of work for now 30 years. First for Attorney General Tom Udall, where I carried his legislative agenda, and the last 22 years for Think New Mexico. And I've never seen an army of lobbyists on this bill, like this bill before on any other issue. And just to give you a sense, or just to give your viewers a sense, among the lobbyists for the industry was a former Speaker of the House, Raymond Sanchez, two former legislators in addition to former Speaker Sanchez, and two lobbyists who are married to current legislators. And that was just the tip of the iceberg. So it was sort of an all-star cast of blue chip lobbyists that the industry was able to pull together to oppose the bill.
Now, it's no secret we live in one of the poorest states in the country. There are a lot of folks in our state that are struggling just to get by week to week, check to check. Then the pandemic hits us a year ago and really adding that financial pressure. So, folks may not be able to go to a bank to be able to get a loan. And they turn to some of these so-called payday lenders to get a loan where they can, obviously at various amounts. I mean, is there something more that we need to address with our financial system here in our state to help address this issue?
Well, this was the argument in part that the lobbyists made for the industry. And they said, if Think New Mexico and Senator Soules are successful in bringing the rate down to 36%, our industry will leave and there'll be no one to make these loans to low-income New Mexicans. But that was contradicted by the testimony from the credit unions. And it's interesting, in New Mexico, well, first of all, the credit unions historically were created by business people who were trying to protect their employees from loan sharks. So we've sort of come full circle. And their CEOs testified that there's 142 credit union branches all through New Mexico who are already making these small loans profitably and for less than 36%. And so their argument to the legislature, which I thought was very compelling, was if this industry were to leave the state, we're more than happy to pick up that market share, and we can make these loans profitably for less than 36%. So that's really the answer, is we can make credit in New Mexico both safe, affordable, and also accessible to every New Mexican who needs a small loan.
So if this were to happen and perhaps credit unions were able to gain more members, do you think this could help even out the playing field on both sides with credit unions and also the banks to allow for more loans being accessible to New Mexicans?
Yeah, this is what's happened in other states. So for example, Montana, like New Mexico, had very, very high interest rates, and their legislature passed a law to bring their rates down to 36%. And they noticed that in the year after the law went into effect, credit union lending for small loans expanded by 26%. So absolutely, this would be a way to level that playing field and make credit again safe and affordable.
Okay, I want to kind of stay on this issue, but it also has to do with financial literacy. Now, you've been working on efforts to make financial literacy part of graduation requirements for high school students in New Mexico. Can you kind of share with us an update on what happened with those efforts? I believe it stalled in a Senate Education Committee this legislative session. Is that correct?
Not exactly. We
Okay.
got it to the Senate Education Committee. It stalled on the Senate floor.
Okay.
This was part of the same package, because when we did our analysis and we put out a study in the fall on predatory lending, we said part of the solution is to address the lack of financial literacy in New Mexico. We're ranked 47th of the 50 states by Wallet Hub in financial literacy. And we noticed that many states, including 17 in the last decade, have made financial literacy a high school graduation requirement. And it's just teaching kids the basics of budgeting and saving and investing, and also understanding how credit works. And we were really impressed that we introduced the bill on the House side. It passed 65-0. It passed through the Senate Education Committee unanimously, but then got to the Senate floor with 8 days to go, and we never got a vote. We were pretty confident that if it came to a vote, it would have passed and gone to the governor's desk. And that's another bill that we will bring back, we hope, next year.
What do we know with studies with this that show that requirements like this can make an impact?
Well, it's really an exciting policy idea, even if you're not a policy wonk. I was talking to one of the leaders of the financial literacy movement who teaches financial literacy in California. And he said, Fred, it's not just financial literacy, it's also an anti-poverty strategy. And I asked him what he meant. And he said, well, a lot of my students go back home and they teach their parents, they teach their grandparents about what they're learning in school in terms of opening a bank account and budgeting and so forth. So it's a really effective way, not just to teach people what they need in today's modern society, but it's also an anti-poverty strategy. And there are a number of studies that show that people that take financial literacy, their debt levels go down. And that's a good thing in our society. So we think it's something that is proven effective in other states and would be very effective here in New Mexico.
I want to move on and talk about another issue that has been criticized in New Mexico for a while, and that is transparency with capital outlay projects in our state. What steps did you see lawmakers take this year that you think can help improve that?
Well, here we have some good news. So this is something we've been working on for 6 years, and New Mexico has a fairly unique system among the 50 states for allocating money for public works projects like bridges and dams and road systems. And we're the only state that actually delegates it to the 112 legislators, who basically carve it up into pieces for each one of them to take home. And we documented this in a report that we did 6 years ago called The Story of the Christmas Tree Bill. And back in 1977, if you wanted to get a public works project passed, you simply introduced a bill with a funding source. But in 1977, with 2 days left to go, the then chair of the Senate Finance Committee there were 25 different bills, and he rolled them up into a single bill called the Christmas Tree Bill. And just so there wasn't any confusion among the legislators, they spaced the wording on the front page in the shape of a tree so that everybody would know this is the Christmas Tree Bill, as in, if we pass this, everybody will get a present to take back to their district. And this is how they've done it really for the last 44 years. And there's many problems with this system. One is they don't disclose who the sponsors are of the individual projects. And so what this bill, House Bill 55 did, is that from now on, we will disclose the sponsors of these projects. And in the Christmas Tree Bill, there's about 2,000 projects, and this year about $500 million, $500 million. And for the first time in 44 years, the public will know who's sponsoring which projects and be able to hold their legislators accountable for those projects. And in many cases over the years, there have been projects that aren't either shovel ready or even infrastructure. So for example, there's actually a doggy drinking fountain in Las Cruces that was paid for with $200,000 of taxpayer money, even though we have thousands of New Mexicans who still don't have access to clean drinking water. It's been used for zoo animals. It's been used for lots of things that aren't even, roads or bridges and that kind of thing. And we think by finally making these appropriations transparent to the public, that will deter some of the worst pork barrel spending that's too often occurred in the past 4 decades.
All right, I want to talk with you about another issue, and that is the state tax on Social Security. This is an issue that your organization has been working on, trying to push for the state to repeal that. What are your thoughts on this issue, and were you surprised that it wasn't able to be repealed this year?
Yeah, we were very disappointed that it wasn't repealed this year. And just to give your viewers a little background, Anthony, this is a tax that only 13 states do. And of those 13 states, we have the second harshest tax. And it's really a cruel tax in the sense that it's a double tax. As many of your viewers know, when they earn money, before that money even hits their bank account, it's taxed by the federal government. And now the state government, at least since 1990, also takes a cut. And this was a law that was passed on the second to last day in the 1990 session. And it was inserted as an amendment into a very complicated tax bill on page 29 of this 30-page bill. And we've had this tax for 30 years. And unfortunately, it hurts people that really we don't want to be taxing. So for example, in New Mexico, 11% of people that receive Social Security income are also the primary caregivers for their grandchildren. So these New Mexicans have to choose, the average Social Security benefit is about $14,000, and they're trying to pay for their own retirement and also take care of their grandchildren. So we want to see this tax repealed, and it makes no sense that the state government taxes it because this is a federal program administered by the federal government. The state has no part in it. So the good news is there were 5 bills this session that were introduced to repeal it. And I'm happy to report both Democrats and Republicans sponsored that. 3 of the bills were in the Senate, but unfortunately they never received a hearing. And 2 of the bills were on the House side, and they were killed in committee. One bright spot was that in the Senate, on the second to last day, a senator amended our bill into another tax bill. and said he was really disappointed that the Senate hadn't heard it in committee, and he got it into this Senate bill, and they debated it for an hour. It narrowly lost 16 to 22, and several of the senators said if it had been introduced earlier, they would have voted for it. So again, we're optimistic that this is a bill that will get addressed next year.
There are some who may be concerned about, okay, if we repeal this state tax on Social Security, where are we going to make up that money? Your response?
Well, we have a $7.4 billion budget. The amount of money that would be lost by repealing the Social Security double tax would be about $60 to $70 million, or less than 1%. And I think if there's a political will to get this done, they could certainly find that within that $7.4 billion budget. And we'd be happy to show them different ways that they could do this and get it repealed tomorrow if they wanted to.
Okay, I want to stay with this retirement issue and talk with you about something you've been working on with Think New Mexico, and that is making more retirement savings accounts available for more New Mexicans who may not have them available through their work. Can you talk with us about the Work and Save Act?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So this was something that we got passed last year in the last legislative session. And it came about because we discovered that about 2/3 of New Mexicans have $10,000 or less saved for their retirement. So these are people that are going to try to get through their retirement years on their Social Security benefits alone. And as your viewers may know, Social Security was never designed to be your sole source of income in your retirement. It was always designed to be a supplement. And so we looked around at things that we might be able to do to help people in their retirement. And we discovered that many people who work in the private sector don't have access to a personal retirement account, simply because so many businesses in New Mexico are small and just don't have the bandwidth to create something like this. So what we designed was something that works like a 529 account. That's a tax-deferred plan that you can use to save for your children's college, to go to college. And so, and it's administered by the state. It would cost employers nothing. The exciting thing about it is we discovered that people are 15 times more likely to save if it can be deducted from their employment check. Wow. So we created this act, and the legislature passed it. And we're really excited about this as a good policy to make retirement savings accounts accessible to people who maybe just work for themselves or work for a small business that isn't able to provide that. And that should be up and running by next year. And we think it's something that will spread quickly and help a lot of New Mexicans right now who don't have enough saved for their retirements.
Now, we just have under 3 minutes left to go, but I want to speak with you also about your organization's efforts to reform the Public Employees Retirement Association, the PERA board, to establish some qualifications that are needed. Can you kind of share with our viewers some things about this board that they might not know, and just really how important they are?
Yeah, that's another great question, Anthony. Thank you. So the Public Employees Retirement Association represents about 90,000 New Mexicans, and they oversee a $17 billion pension fund for those 90,000 current government employees and retired government employees. And amazingly, no one on that board, there's 12 people on the board, is required by state statute to have a background in finance or investments. And unfortunately, and perhaps this is predictable, this board has become very dysfunctional. Recently, they had a board meeting where they bickered for seven minutes about the quality of snacks that they were being served by their staff. for the last 5 months, they've also been bickering about who the chairperson is going to be of that board. They haven't been able to decide that. Their last meeting, they bickered for 45 minutes about the agenda and couldn't agree on an agenda. So these are the people that are supposed to be overseeing $17 billion of investments. We believe that the entire board should be qualified and have a background in finance and investments. And that's another bill that's probably going to have to wait for next year, but that needs to happen as quickly as possible.
Okay, we have just under a minute left, but I'd like to give you a moment to let our viewers know where they can find out more information about your organization and these issues you're working on.
Thank you again, Anthony. Yes, I'd encourage any of your viewers that want to know more about any of these issues to go to our website at www.thinknewmexico, written out as one word, not ThinkNM, but thinknewmexico.org. And they can go to our Action Center, which is a way to efficiently contact their legislators on these issues and also to learn more about them.
Fred Nathan is founder and executive director of Think New Mexico. Fred, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the program.
And Anthony, thank you so much for having me on the show.
And we want to thank you for joining us for another episode of Fronteras, A Changing America. I'm Anthony Morneau. We'll see you next time.